The next item is, do you need a desktop or a laptop? And that's an interesting question. I mean, obviously, if you're taking it on the road, you're not going to take a desktop with you. But if you're going to use it mostly at the office, should you be getting a desktop or a laptop? I think the first way to answer this question is to say what are you going to connect it to? So you're typically going to connect it to a projector, to Ethernet, your network, your internet through cables, Ethernet. USB, you're going to have a few USB connections that you're going to connect. Is it going to be USB 2, 3, USB-C, which is the latest version? Do you need Wi-Fi and Bluetooth? Do you only need one of them? Do you need none of them? One thing to keep in mind with all of those connections, I typically don't restrict myself to the laptop or computer that I'm buying based on the connections that already exist on the computer, simply because you can buy adapters. And I'll talk more about those adapters. Another thing is, when you make that decision between a desktop and a laptop, one thing that used to be true and is, I would say, a little less true, although still is to some extent, you get more performance per dollar with a desktop than you would with a laptop. And what I did is I went to the Dell website and I looked for two computers. One was a Dell G5 desktop, the other was a Dell G5 laptop. G is their kind of low-end gaming platform compared to Alienware, which is their higher end and more expensive. And I tried to get two computers with relatively similar performance and similar parts. So what I got was, for the desktop, an i7 10700KF CPU with 8 cores and 16 megabytes of cache for roughly the same price. With the laptop, I still got an i7, an Intel i7 10750H, but only with 6 cores, and this was a laptop version, so it has lower performance, only 12 megabytes of cache, and we'll talk about what cache is and why it's important. Both of them had an NVIDIA RTX 2060 graphic card, which is pretty good. The one that the desktop had 8 gigabytes of cache for the graphic card. The laptop version only had 6 gigabytes of cache, which is less and less performance. Both of them had 16 gigabytes of RAM, random access memory, 16 gigabytes running on a bus speed of 2.933 gigahertz or 2933 megahertz. The desktop had a 512 solid state hard disk drive, or disk drive, I should say, SSD, that's NVMe, and we'll talk about what it is, plus a 1 terabyte of a hard disk drive operating with the SATA, S-A-T-A interface, whereas the laptop only had the 512 gigabyte solid state drive, SSD, NVMe, and didn't have an external drive. Both of them were just about the same price of $1,372 versus $1,249. Okay, the next question that you want to ask is the portability of that computer. What is the size and what is the weight? And portability obviously applies mostly to if you're buying a laptop, not so much a desktop, because a desktop is not very portable. So the portability of a laptop, ask yourself, what screen size do I need? So you can, I think, still get 11 or 11-inch size screens. Those are pretty small, but they make for a very light, sometimes more expensive because of miniaturization laptop. My age, 11.6 inch laptop screen size. I still have one of those and it's getting really hard to see. You can go up to 17.3 inch. I'm sure that there are laptops with more than that, but very, very rare. 17.3 inch. I think that the 15 to 15.6 inch screen size is kind of the, I wouldn't say optimal, but kind of the sweet spot. And by sweet spot, it means that you probably get the biggest bang for your buck when you go with 15 to 15.6. They're big enough to accommodate good components and good performance at a reasonable size. Now, Weight is another element. A smaller laptop, I looked at a 13-inch laptop, came with a 2.56 pound, came at 2.56 pound. That's pretty light, that's pretty easy to carry around. And I found laptops, and this is just looking at the Dell website, I found laptops at 9.04 pounds, a 9-pound laptop. And typically, the gaming computers, laptops, the ones that can do video editing, and I have one of those are on the heavy side because of what they have inside. Another thing to keep in mind is battery life. When you're buying a laptop, how long will the batteries last? Batteries, you can sometimes have different versions of batteries, but at the same time, you may have the same battery lasting longer on a smaller size laptop, on a lower performance laptop. So that's something to keep in mind. You may get a very high performance laptop and run out of battery very quickly. My video editing laptop or gaming laptop, if I take it on the road without a plug, it runs, if I'm running the GPU, the graphic processing unit, it can run for 25 minutes and run out of battery. And the lower performance laptops, really the ones that you're going to be using for presentation for the most part, you can run them on batteries probably for 6 to 9 hours, maybe even more than that. Another thing to keep in mind when you're trying to make the decision, do I buy a desktop or do I buy a laptop, is actually the ability to combine both. And it's not really combined, but buy both. So you're going to have a desktop for certain functionality and a laptop for anything else. So if you think about that, let's say that I decide that my presentations are typically going to be on a laptop. So I can take a lower power laptop, a $500 laptop really, and run my presentations off of it. But when I'm doing video editing or when I'm doing Zoom from my office, Zoom or anything else, live streaming webinars, virtual webinars, then I'm going to use the other one, and I can actually connect the two. So I can bring my presentation from one laptop into the other one because, you know, it comes out through HDMI, and I can have an HDMI to USB adapter or some kind of a mixer like the ATEM Mini Pro or anything else, bring it into the other laptop as a camera, as a source, and then you're kind of splitting the processing power, and you can keep both. So that's something else that I want you to think about.